academic or you're a regular guy. We have to be fearless.
FrontlineTV.com.
Dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room at the Crusade channel is always open at crusadechannel.com/chat. And that's the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. At crusadechannel.com/chat, as I said. If you want to follow Joe and I, we have a couple different places where you can follow us and help us out, support us, where we have other content. One is our interview show that goes on AM radio on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Eastern time at noon. That's at the Veritas Catholic Network, the application for which you could download. Or you could go to veritascatholic.com. So even if they're in Connecticut, you could actually be listening to our interviews there. If you're in Alaska, that's the way that would work with that. And finally, on social media, a couple places, Frontline TV on YouTube, and also the frontlinetv.com, One, if you want to share our videos, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And if you want to throw in a few bucks, as they say in Newark. Joe, we don't throw in Newark. We throw. We throw in a few bucks. If you want to throw in a few bucks to help Joe and I and keep our little venture here going, that would be great. You could do that at the frontlinetv.com, the So the problem is, and we were talking before the show, Joe Resinello, the problem is, you say, we talk about Republicans all the time. We talk about Democrats, and at the end of the day, obviously, what we're looking for is courage. Now, there's plenty of people, Joe Resinello, and I don't think you and I are amongst them, okay? And that's not false humility. There's some people who have some real stones, okay? I mean stones. They have some real courage, okay? Now, we do to agree. We open our mouth. We know that we're risking. We say it all the time. We have jobs that we could get canceled, Joe. It's cancel culture. Say the wrong thing. Marriage is between one man and one woman. Oh, you're a Neanderthal. You need to be canceled because you're a hater. But then there's some people who have some real stones, okay? And then there are people who just, Joe Resinello, they got all the money in the world. They have a certain amount of power, certain amount of influence, and they are just, especially when it's men, I guess the only thing you could call them is, well, whether they're men or women, but you really call them, they're cowards. They're cowards. They have everything in life, and yet they still, have a hard time, saying the truth of all these things that confront us out there in the culture. So with that, let's talk about courage, Joe Resinello. We need some.
Well, it begins with Sister Dee Dee Byrne. Those who may not know who she is, she spoke at the Republican convention. She's like a real nun, like the real deal. Basically, she's filed a lawsuit against Washington, D.C., if you haven't heard, for its rejection of her request for a religious exemption from the vaccination. Basically, Sister Dee Dee, if you don't know who she is, she's a doctor. She went to Georgetown Medical School. She was a U.S. Army colonel, and she's a nun. She offers free medical service to the poor and the undocumented. And now her practice is being threatened in D.C. because she's basically for the refusal of granting her a religious exemption from the vaccine, basically. Right. She's requesting an exemption. Basically, it was an unsigned email that came to her, basically saying that, stated that her religious exemption would pose an undue hardship to DC Health. The letter further specified that Sister Byrne had 5 days to get vaccinated, after which she would lose her license. Listen, I mean, this is where it doesn't shock me, Joe, to be honest with you. They're going to get their pound of flesh from her. She's a legitimate witness. I mean, legitimate. She's a real nun. She's not nuns on the bus signing
She's
Obamacare.
Not Sister Janine
Gramnick. No. She's a real nun. She lives an austere life. She's the real deal. And sadly, most people don't know nuns like that. They're there and they're out there. You want to see an authentic witness of the Catholic faith, they're there if you want to see it. But here's the thing. This is about civil disobedience, and there's a price to pay. You see, we don't like to focus on that sometimes. Laws can be unjust. Let's look at Germany. It was legal to imprison Jews. It was legal. It was unjust. It was legal in America to own people of color. It was legal. It was unjust. Well, this is unjust. Clearly, she's helping people. She's helping the poor. She asked for an exemption. They're not granting it. That's unjust. But that's part of the deal. You
Right.
see, we don't want to sometimes accept that. And that goes for all people. I mean, it's Lent. We pray more in Lent. I've been praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet. I've been meditating on the Passion of our Lord. Joe, when he didn't open his mouth, it was unjust. I think of the
Right.
crowning of thorns. Christ didn't open his mouth. It was the most we freed a murderer, Barabbas, instead of an innocent man. He was God.
Right.
They freed a murderer. Instead, it was unjust. Ultimately, though, the truth always comes out. And here's another thought, which I think about sometimes. Stephen Biko, during the apartheid period in South Africa, said these words. I always think of them. He said this. He was murdered, by the way. I would rather die for an idea that will live than live for an idea that will die. And what we're seeing now is so temporary, it will so fade away, and everyone has bought it hook, line, and sinker because of the crowd, because of fear, and she's standing tall. Good for her, but here's the deal, Joe. Sometimes when you stand tall, you're going to pay the price.
No,
It's
no, no.
part of
There's
the
there's
deal.
there's no question about it. I mean that's part. I always thought to myself, well, why didn't they just let Martin Luther King out of jail? You know, when he wrote the letters from a Birmingham jail, like when he was in prison. Well, because you would say in your gut, you say, well, it's unjust. So why didn't they just let him out of jail? Because at that moment, like you said, the law was the law. And you have to go to prison sometimes because the law is the way it is. And that's what we call civil disobedience. He accepted it. A guy who, well, let me just say Nelson Mandela was, I guess, in the same boat. All right. He went to jail. He was in jail for however many years.
Like 30
And
years. I
30
actually
years.
visited the prison. What's it called? You could see it. It's sort of like Alcatraz from Cape Town. You could almost see it in an island. I actually visited it.
Yeah, so I mean but people who do these things, they accept that this can eventually help it to you. Now, Sister Dee Dee Byrne is not going to jail. Let's be clear. But Sister Dee Dee Byrne, as you said, is a doctor. Now, these idiots with the state, they want to try to make it seem like she's causing an undue burden on the system. Well, what about the undue burden on the poor child that she's going to operate on or she's going to provide health care for? Are they worried about the undue burden on the little kid? No, because their thing is political. Whether you're talking now, this is what I mean. In this case, Joe, Sister Dee Dee Byrne is not going to jail, but like you said, she might be taken down a few pegs. She could have her license taken away. Now, to me, what's worse? Because this is a woman who's given her heart and soul to Jesus. Okay. So she wants to she wants to tend to his poor. So she uses her skills as a doctor to help poor kids. So her losing her license is a big deal. Why? Because she makes millions of dollars? No, because she wants to help these poor people in Washington, D.C. Now, think of the evil. And yeah, Joe, I'm tired of being called judgmental when we need to call out people who are evil. Muriel Bowser, the mayor of the District of Columbia, is evil. The director of the D.C. Health Department, LaQuandra Nesbitt, she's evil. And so is the District of Columbia. That you would say to this holy woman, you can't do what you do. We're going to yank your license because you don't want to get a vaccine. That's evil. I'm sorry. And they have no consideration for the kids that she's taking care of. But here's the rather than me getting angry, this is where it gets good. I always said, Joe, that if I got in any trouble, I'm going to pick up the phone and call the St. Thomas More Society. Okay? And that's exactly what happened here. So Chris Ferrara, okay, He is special counsel with the Thomas More Society. We have yet to have him on the show. I would really love to have Chris Ferrara on the show. I like Chris Ferrara a lot. He's what you call, Joe, super duper intelligent. We've had some intelligent people,
Not.
some he's in that group of super duper intelligent
He's a
people.
real
Okay?
deal lawyer. He's not
He's a real
a
deal
chicken and
lawyer.
rice lawyer.
And he doesn't, and he says things that people don't want to hear, but things that are true. So anyway, he has stepped in. He said Sister Dee has sought and been denied a religious exemption from DC's health worker COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Said Chris Ferrara, all 3 COVID-19 vaccines approved in the United States have been tested, developed, and produced with cell lines derived from abortions, something to which Sister Deidre has deep and sincere religious opposition. So judicial intervention is required to, quote, to prevent a senseless bar on the practice of medicine by a religious sister who has devoted her career in the District of Columbia to healing the sick who cannot afford quality medical care. You know what, Joe? Why do we know? And then I'm going to hand it over to you, okay? Why is it that we know what's going on and we're so fearful of saying it? Why, Joe? Why is it that we know that
give up our comfort?
Well,
Joey,
no. I'm talking about the people that would look at this and say, "Well, that's really a sad thing." Well, why are you not, let's say, raising your fist in the air and doing something to support maybe Sister Deirdre or the St. Thomas More Society? We know why they're doing this. They want everybody to get this jab. We know it, okay? And yet here they are going after a nun who takes care of the poor. And they'll probably come up with some Muriel Bowser and LaQuandra Nesbitt are probably going to come up with some crazy reason why they have to do this because it's in the interest, causing an undue burden. Joe, why is it that it's so difficult for people to stand up and tell these people to go and kick rocks? That we're not letting you win. We're not letting you win this time.
Well, I mean, because Joe, they're afraid to lose their own position, their own comfort. I mean, let's be honest. We'll go to World War II. Germans knew that Jews were in concentration camps. Not all Germans were involved, clearly, but they knew. They didn't say anything. Many people in the Catholic Church didn't say anything. Those who did died. So you see, this is why people don't say anything, because they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to lose their house. They're afraid they're going to lose their job. They're afraid. I mean, and many times their fears are come to fruition. You see, that's real. Just because you hope, you pray, but that can happen, and it's happening to her. Whether she loses her license or not, I doubt it. If that's going to actually happen. But the state holds the cards. Let's be honest. And that means sometimes going to jail, and she may go to jail, and people sometimes lose their lives. But that's why people don't say anything. I mean, it's the power of the crowd to be that one voice that just says, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, sometimes you get ground into the dust. And that's a grace, by the way, to do that. Think of St. Peter. St. Peter saw the miracles of Christ. He witnessed them. He watched Jesus Christ walk on water. He saw that. That is something that is and we can go on and on and on. He denied him. Why? He was afraid. And that's real. So to be honest with you, those who do stand up under pressure like that, that's a grace. There's no question about it. We're made of flesh and blood. However, it's part of the deal sometimes. Sadly.
Well, no, I get it. But then see, I don't know. I don't think we're living in a much different time. But either way, here in America, all you good people out there at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Here in America, Joe, we have the means at our disposal to fight these oligarchs, to fight this tsunami that comes from them, primarily through the left, but as we mentioned on the show before, Joe, also from the right. You got George Bush and the rest of them. They want to allow for all these immigrants and visas and everything. They want to drive down wages. We know we get it from them too. But we have the means, Joe, at our disposal. People like the St. Thomas More Society and others, okay? People like, what's the name of Jay Sekulo's group? the American Center for Law and Justice, which is basically the conservative counterpart to the ACLU, whereas the ACLU are a bunch of radicals, okay, radical leftists. The ACLJ are conservative, conservative lawyers and people that look at the Constitution as they should. We have the means at our disposal to be able to fight these people. You know what the problem is, though, Joe? A lot of times these people are fighting their fight alone, mainly in the political realm, because we want to support Sister Dee Dee in any way we can. Do our conservative Republicans, politicians, do they ever step in? Okay. Do they ever turn around and try to help it? In this case, a woman who, by the way, Joe, let's face it, she fears nothing. She stood up at the Republican National Convention with a rosary in her hand, the size of a howitzer, okay, and said, here's my weapon. So let's face it, Sister Dee Dee fears nothing. Okay. But does that mean ought we not defend her, even though she's a profile right now in Courage? Because she's telling Muriel Bowser and LaQuandra Nesbitt, kick rocks. I'm not doing it. Okay. I have a deeply held, sincere religious belief against taking that vaccine. Okay. I'm not doing it. But where's her support? And shouldn't she get some, particularly in this age of communication, Joe, where nobody can say they're not hearing about this, particularly Catholics. And what do we do about it? Nothing. What does the USCCB do about it? Nothing.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know how much support you really have because those cases are few and far between. She's a high-profile person. And Ferrara took her case. I'll be honest with you. If it was me, I doubt my case would get taken. And unless you have a lot of money, you're going to get trampled on. It's part of the cross. You see, I'll refer to Father Hardin once again. A Catholic is supposed to know the truth, speak the truth, live the truth, and suffer for the truth. And we're not willing to do it. We're not willing to give up the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl, the NFL, let's just get on that stupid subject. The NFL has spit in the face of the common American for the last 3 years, and everyone watches the Super Bowl. If you can't give, because here's another thing. These people are married to two things: money and power, and comfort, which comes from money and power. That's it. That's their principle. You take that away from them, they'll fold like a cheap $2 blanket. And we're not willing to give up anything. And that's why nothing changes. You know, I could remember you talk about willing to pay the price. I think of the movie Gandhi with Ben Kingsley. It's a powerful movie. And I think of when they protested the salt. Gandhi said, we will make our own salt for the Indian Ocean. And the men marched to the ocean and they faced. Did you see the film?
It's been a long time.
Well, it's a very powerful scene. They marched to the ocean and the British troops are there with sticks, and they march and they beat them. Row after row after row after row, and they never lifted their finger against the British. You see, that's a people who are willing to pay a price. By the way, the British left because of their resolve. We can't give up the Super Bowl. We're not there yet. The culture is rancid.
But Joe, then when they start crying to me, then I say I'm not listening.
Well,
and
no, I get it. But
I want to
Joe,
give you an
who's going to cry is us.
I want to ask.
We're going to cry.
No, Joe.
Not cry for that, but because of the
crying.
suffering. We're not even close to there yet. I don't even listen to them.
We don't even have to be there. My point to you, Joe, is that we don't even have to get there. We still have so much on our side in America that we don't even have to get there, and we still don't do a damn thing because, like you said, everybody just wants to sit home. Look, I've said it a million times, Joe. I'll say it a million times more. I am not one of the Lord's most courageous persons. I would not. There's nothing special about me. But I went out there and prayed with Jesse Romero and 300 other Catholics, okay, against the Satanists and their convention that they held down here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Okay. I mean, people will say, well, what does that mean? At least it's something.
It is.
Joe Rossinella, real quick, you have you organized, I was part of it, but you really spearheaded it. You organized a prayer, a rosary rally, the first of every month in front of parishes throughout Bergen County. Okay. And the thing is, so if you say to me, "Well, what are you doing about it?" At least we're trying to do something.
No, I
At
agree. No,
least
no,
at
no.
least we're trying to get out in the
I
public
agree.
square and bear some sort of witness. What do? You drive by, you give a thumbs up. Great. Why don't you pull over and join us?
Well,
Is my
it
is
is.
my
I
larger
I get
point.
it because people, Joe. I mean, I've said it a million times. People don't want to see what's going on. They choose not to see what's going on, and they only see what's going on when it affects their home. Um, period. We're starting to see a little bit of that because it's affecting kids. You're seeing parental, like, like confrontations, peaceful confrontations in school boards because, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But I mean, people don't care. People care about making money. People care about their own comfort. Frankly, I've said this, I could remember this. This is a man who used to go to daily mass. My father's friend, my father's best friend, actually grew up in the same neighborhood that you grew up in. I could remember him saying to my father when I used to go to India, "Your son's got to forget those people." And I remember saying to my father, "What if God says, I'm going to forget you?"
Right.
You see, you don't, why do I bring that up? You don't float into heaven. You see, Christ was tempted in the desert. God offered him everything. He said, "No, I will take my lot here. Thank you very much."
Mhm.
You see, we don't do that. We don't
Right.
do that in good times, Joe. Never mind in times of tragedy. We contracept because we want things. We don't love our brother. Do I do it perfectly? No. We live above our means. We don't share our wealth with those who don't have nothing because we want everything. This is when times are good. Now times are getting a little bit of a pinch. We still don't care, but yet everybody's going to heaven. Everybody's a good guy. Joe, it doesn't work that way. It didn't
No,
work that way with Christ. And what's good for the master is good for the servant. If America, the country is slipping through our hands, it may even be gone. In fact, it's beyond human help at this point. The
I think I might
society,
I think I might disagree with you on that, but go ahead. Go ahead.
but I don't think there's a human because the culture is not willing to go back. They're just simply not. You could trace it back to the sexual revolution. You could trace it back. What will get us there is suffering. And it's coming. It's coming. Believe it.
Well,
The
here's the
economic
difference.
system will collapse. Where the debt is getting
Yeah,
that's
but
where it's
Joe,
going to
right,
come.
Joe, the problem with that is, and it would be too much for us to get into here at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel. It would be too much for us to get into tonight. The problem is, even if the economic system collapses, those people who are deliberately tanking the economic system through their, I say deliberately, so I was about to say reckless. I don't want to contradict myself. They know what they're doing. Joe, they're still going to be holding all the cards. Now, there's a lot of rich people out there who are what Stalin would have called useful idiots. Those people are going to lose their wealth. Those people are going to experience some pain and suffering. But those who pull the strings, Joe, they're going to maintain their wealth when the economic system collapses. The problem is going to be, you and I have been saying this, and many other good people are saying this is unsustainable, this is unsustainable, this is unsustainable. So, to a degree, I really don't know what happens if the dollar collapses, but to a degree, we are somewhat prepared, at least to the point where we acknowledge that there's going to be pain and suffering. Joe, there's delusional people out there who are riding down the road in their sports car, doing private equity, okay, blazing down 101 in Scottsdale, Arizona, thinking none of this is ever going to end. Joe, when the crap hits the fan, those people who have money now, who are not the oligarchs, they won't have any more. And my issue with it is that those in control, Joe, that are deliberately tanking the economy, they already have their contingency plan. Joe Resinello. It's we who are going to suffer. But here's my point to you. Like I said before, if we have to wake people up, okay, and they're not listening to us, then bring on the pain and suffering. Bring it on then. Bring it
No, but
on, because
easier
that's the only
said
thing
than
that's
done.
going to change things.
No, well, I get it. I don't want to have to live through it. It's easier said than done. starving is not bring it on. Watching your kids die because they
No,
don't have
I'm not going
no,
that
but
far. I'm not saying
that's
this
but
is
that's part of it.
I'm not
That's
saying this
I
is
worked at
Russia starving
Joe,
the Ukrainians.
I was at a what's it called? I worked at a dispensary in Haiti. A kid had an appendicitis, and the priest was blessing him because he was going to die. That's bring it on. You see, Americans don't understand bring it on. The world understands that. Like, that's the only thing that's going to change this country. See, Americans are, our lives are so comfortable. We have no idea what people live with in this world. And that's the only thing that's going to change it. No one's listening anymore. The political system is run by oligarchs on both sides of it. They're not going to change anything. And the culture underneath it is rotten. No one's willing to listen. It's like the little Dutch boy who has his finger in the dike. The dike is going to fall. No one cares. Noah building the ark. You think it took him? He was building it probably in his front yard for a year. He was probably laughed at. Noah floated away safely. Everyone else drowned. No one's listening, and
Mhm.
no one's going to listen.
Well, listen, but then that's why you need people of courage to keep standing up,
Well,
okay?
they're the
Maybe
prophets. She's a
all right,
prophet. There are prophets. Father Fidelis, he's a prophet. He
right.
pays the price. He goes to jail. To be honest with you, to a degree, so are we. We're not invited to the barbecue, Joe. We're weird because we say the truth. We're weird. You're a
Well
weird person. You have
listen,
kids. You
Austin,
have 5
Texas,
kids. You're weird.
well,
No, I'm not. I'm actually trying to be a good Catholic. That's what I'm trying to do.
which I
So,
guess makes you weird in the current times that we live in. I guess that's what you would say makes you weird. What would you say? Saturday morning, you go in front of a parish and you pray? Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I don't think this is so far fetched. I mean, you got to see what in Europe when the priest is carrying the Blessed Sacrament in the monstrance down the street, and you got to see the people walking by get on their knees because Jesus is passing by. I mean, I'm sure you would get some of that in New York, in certain or in the United States, in certain places. But yeah, Joe, we know how it is. You're weird, but I will tell you this: I expect, and not because of I mean, knowing something about her, not just because she's a nun of the Catholic Church. I expect someone with Sister Dee Dee Burns' convictions to bear with the suffering. She would bear it because that's the type of person she is. But you could suffer in other ways. Even if you have money, even if you are in political office, the way, Joe, when people say things about you in public, particularly things that are not true, and you stand up against them because you're standing up for what is truthful, especially in the modern, with all the transgenderism, now it's turning into transhumanism, gay marriage, all of it. Okay. We can find some examples of courage in the public square, in public office. Now, again, my own personal jury is still out on this guy, but I think Ron DeSantis is a guy who might have the stones that we're looking for, Joe Resinello. What say you?
well, it's funny you say that because I was thinking about what we're going to be talking about is DeSantis basically was criticized by the White House, particularly Jen Psaki, about a bill that's saying, let's just go into the bill itself. The Florida Senate, it's preventing schools from basically discussing gender ideology and sexual orientation from kindergarten to 3rd grade. So you're talking about the ages of 4 to 9.
Ooh, that's so radical,
But
Joe.
here's the thing. Is it a good step? Yes. And frankly, it's a winner. And I'll tell you why. Even Democrats, most people don't really want young children to hear that. They're not even at puberty yet. You can make that argument. Why isn't it through K through 12?
Right.
DeSantis, when you say he's very brave, now I give credit where credit's due. I don't think there should be any sexual education in public school because this is an ideology. And you say that I have an ideology. I'll just take it in another direction. I don't want you teaching my kids don't go to public school, but in terms of I don't want you teaching my kids about contraception because it goes against my faith. Now, if I say that in a group of Catholics, they think I'm a freak.
Right.
But that's the truth, guys. Just to tell you right now, just like on Friday, you're still not supposed to eat meat. And if you choose to eat meat, you're supposed to do something else. That's a tenet of your faith. By the way, once again, I'm not God, but you don't float into heaven. That doesn't mean you tick boxes to get into heaven, because it's about your heart in terms of love. Do you have love in your heart? But God does lay down some law. You don't follow it, guess what? You don't get in. That's the way
Right.
it goes. But here's the deal. Getting back to this, I don't want any sexual education. You know why? Because I pay taxes too. And you don't want my ideology? Well, I don't want yours. Whether it's this or whether it's talking about contraception, I don't want it. So how about we stick to subjects? But my opinion doesn't count, and it
Right.
hasn't counted for decades.
That's the situation that I will agree with you, where let's say, particularly Catholics, they allowed the leftists to bully them in the public schools, to allow sex education should not be taught in school. Sex is to be taught by parents. Mothers teach their daughters, fathers teach their sons. Okay. I don't need this teacher who they could agree with me on things or not agree. I don't want a third party
Joe, but
teaching
here's
my
the
now.
thing.
Now, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, please. What I was
No,
going to say is they don't let them get bullied. They go along, Joe. You see, the
Well,
majority.
but Joe, that's the same thing that they've been doing for years. Oh, that's one less burden that I have when it comes to raising my daughter. Then when your daughter's going out and getting laid when she's 15 years old, comes home and says, "Mommy, I'm pregnant." Okay, because the contraception you as the mother put your daughter on failed, and your daughter got pregnant, and then you rush her down to Planned Parenthood, and then you wonder why, because you ceded your responsibility to the state, the responsibility that you had as a parent to the state. In other words, when all this stuff that they try, we know how they try to indoctrinate kids. Why do we allow them to do it? You're right. Suzanne's in the chat room at crusadechannel.com. If you're at the front line with Joe and Joe, she said, this bill didn't go far enough. She was echoing exactly what you said.
It
We're
doesn't.
pointing it out because to even remotely say anything about this LGBT juggernaut right now will get you in a lot of trouble. So at least DeSantis has the stones to do that. But you're exactly right. Where's any states turning around saying, public schools in our state, we don't teach sex education? And look at every single parent. Look at everyone and say, that's your responsibility. That's
Well, here's
not
the
ours.
thing, Joe, but the Catholics are just like everybody else.
I'm not
They're not
disagreeing
pushing back
with you on
because
that.
they're contracepting too. You see, let's take it to that step. That's number one. Number two, this is why we're not going to get a solution from, if he's the best we got, he's just talking about to the third grade. Not good enough, Ron.
Right.
Like, I'll take it, but not good enough.
Right. Because what about the fourth grade, the fifth grade, the sixth grade?
But
What
the
about
thing
those
is,
kids?
because he wants power, Joe. He's not dumb. He knows what's palatable and what isn't. He's not stupid. You don't become the governor of a state being stupid. He knows what's going on. He knows he has a shot at the presidency. He's not going to blow it. My point is, this is where the culture is rancid. This is what's acceptable in his mind. I could sell it to whatever, the third grade. Not good enough. Sad. But that's beside the point. It's beside the point.
Now let's real quick. Let's just say this, okay? We knew even in this small measure, which is so commonsensical. In other words, to make it where third graders don't get to, up till the third grade, you don't learn any of this stuff. None of it. That's really what the law says. So let's talk about. But look at the reaction from Joe. I swear, I find it so hard to be charitable in my heart when it comes to some of these people. Let me try to be. Jen Psaki, okay? So she talked about the new parental rights bill. This is the bill we're talking about in Florida. And you'd think that DeSantis, now this is according to Miranda Devine in the New York Post. She wrote, you think that DeSantis was a vicious bigot motivated by meanness to hurt children. Now, this is what Psaki said. She said, quote, why are Florida leaders deciding they need to discriminate against kids who are members of the LGBTQ community? Okay. What prompts them to do that? Is it meanness? Is it wanting to make kids have a more difficult time? That's when you want to grab them and say, stop effing lying. You know, this has nothing to do with LGBT, other than the fact that we don't want to let all those groups, all those radical groups, introduce this into the curriculum. But here's the step where DeSantis is is right in this, Joe. He said, we want none of it, not LGBT stuff, no sex education below the 3rd grade. None is what he's saying. That means they're the ones that are injecting themselves into this when it's basically saying this is all age inappropriate for 3rd grade kids or below, and we want none of it being taught, not just the LGBT end of it.
Well, again, d- listen, Jen Psaki's a political beast, and she's just spinning the lie. Republicans do the same thing. They spin the lie to basically parrot what people want to hear. Um, Joe, people they're not objective, and they don't care. Like the average person, to be honest with you, I mean, it's just sad. I I'll be honest with you. I just shake my head. I just shake my head. It is We have gotten to a point I don't even recognize. Like, I can't even believe what I hear and see. I can't. I can't even believe this is being discussed, to be honest with you. It's so unbelievable that you're going to teach a 2nd grader, and everyone's and not and actually most people aren't okay with it. But the liars are going to lie because that's how you get power.
Joe, let me be clear. Let me be clear, okay? Because we have a recent example of this, okay? If you think that again, you talk about having to be courageous, you have to be courageous with your own kids. Look at what happened to these good people in Virginia. If you want to see what would happen if they went down to the school board in Florida and said the same thing, said, I don't want you teaching this to my kids, and went up there to the school board and said, we want, let's say it's a particular district, Joe, to say for argument's sake, okay? And they went in there and they went to the school board that controls that district. They said, listen, we as parents, we're telling you this right now. Come the next election, you're all out of a job unless you ban sex education in all of our schools, both grammar school and high school, in the district that's in your authority, or else we're going to do it. Look at what, Joe, if you do that, and in the tone I just did, you have the United States federal government calling you a domestic terrorist. Now, people would say, well, you don't have to be so courageous to go tell those people at the school board not to do this. Yes, you do. You have the attorney general issues a memo that says you have to be, you're on now a watch list for harassment when you go down there and you want to protect your own children. Courage is absolutely required, in this case, because like I said, now you're going to have the full power of the federal government. Look at what they had to do in Virginia, Joe. They had to elect. They had to basically elect a new state government, which is what they did. God bless those people. Okay. Knows when are we going to take their back and go down to the school? But Joe, listen, I could get real French Revolution on these school board members. Believe me, the anger. See, you want to punch me in the face? That's one thing. You want to go after my foster son here, who's about to be my son. You want to go after him and start indoctrinating him with this stuff. That's another case. Okay. But when do we just turn around? In other words, and just step up and start doing this en masse in America. Stop waiting for the politicians to do it. Go down to our local school boards when you know they're teaching their nonsense and tell them we're not allowing this anymore. And if you allow it, we're voting you out. That doesn't strike me as too much to sacrifice, Joe Resinello.
Well, it's funny. You talk about, and I'll give DeSantis credit on this one, because Disney's CEO, Bob Chapek, am I mispronouncing his name? Chapek?
I think it's Chapek.
Chapek.
Let's be clear, Joe. Let's characterize this for what it is. This is a profile in lack of courage.
But it's not shocking. Let me just make that doesn't shock me, because he runs a company and he cares about the bottom line. It doesn't shock me in the least. You're not paid to be courageous, to be honest with you. You're paid to do exactly what he did. They all do it. If you're courageous, you're out of that job. That's a fact. I'm not excusing it, but that's just how it works. But he issues an apology for the company's refusal to condemn Florida's parental rights in the education bill. We're talking about DeSantis. Now, this is what DeSantis says to him, and I give him credit for this. He says, when you have companies that have made a fortune off being family friendly and catering to families and young kids, they should understand that parents and young kids do not want this injected into their kids' kindergarten classroom. He's spot on. Now, let's talk about, I can't even call it courageous. Let's talk about common sense. Why do parents still go to Disney? You see, no. But this is what I'm talking about. You see, Americans just swallow it. Joe, and this is why I just shake my head. They swallow it. Like, they get beaten down, and then they shrug their shoulders and they say, what are you going to do? Now, to a degree, obviously, you don't control the show, but you can do little things like you don't support them financially. That's what you can do. Don't go to Disney. Many people will absolutely agree with DeSantis making this statement. They'll say, you're right. In a kindergarten class, I don't think that this is appropriate. In fact, I bet you 8 out of 10 Americans would say that
Joe,
across political lines, but they'll still go to Disney because they want to post that picture on Facebook to try to pretend like they're rich and look at everybody, make everybody look at the stupid picture that they post. And that's why. And this is why we're in the situation that we're in.
what's funny is that this what would you want to call him, feckless gentleman, Chapek, is he's actually cheesing off both sides. He thinks he's appeasing both sides. Okay. But remember something too. When you're talking about leftists, and that's what these LGBTQ characters are, Joe, the people in their leadership, they're gangsters. That's what they are. Listen, a gangster shakes people down, Joe, for money. Al Sharpton did it for a year. Al Sharpton is a black liberal gangster. He would walk into companies and basically bully them into giving him money. That's what he did for decades. Okay. Now he's a respectable journalist and commentator on MSNBC. Don't ask me how that works out. Okay. Because you and I remember when he was fat. I much prefer, by the way, the fat Al Sharpton, Joe Rosenau. All right. The fat Al Sharpton with the wavy hair, wearing the fur coat down to his
I remember him. I remember
the platform shoes. I much prefer that Al Sharpton. But he went out there and he would extort tons of money out of corporations because he's a gangster. Jesse Jackson's a gangster. That's all. Jesse Jackson's not interested in black civil rights or anything. He's interested in money. So what he did was he went for the money. So this guy Chapek, he figures this way, and he's probably smart to do so. He knows these radical leftists are gangsters and they want money. So what does he do? He throws them a few $100,000 for their organizations while he gives this blathering, effeminate mea culpa, okay, as to how, he's going to fight with you and everything else. Why don't you really have stones? Come out and slam the legislation, Mr. Chapek.
Joe,
I would
because he
respect
wants
him
money.
more, Joe. I
Joe,
would
but
respect him more if he did that.
he doesn't care if you respect him. He cares that he's rich. Joe, this is not the way it's played. I work in corporations. You're not paid to be courageous. You're paid to say yes. And this is the choice everyone makes in life. Here's the message, guys. The choice is made every day. There's certain things you can't go along with if you want to follow God. And by the way, if you don't follow God, you don't go into heaven. It's a choice you make every day. And this is, you see, I'll tell you a story. When I was in grad school, I worked for a consulting company, and I worked for the controller of the company, and we caught a guy lying. He was stealing. He was overbilling his client. We caught him cold. And I sat outside the CEO's office. It was a small company of 100 people auditing phone bills for companies. And I'm like, Jose's going to get fired. I was friendly with the secretary. I'm like, he's going to get canned. He walks in, comes back out. He was very good at his job. The CEO called the company, said they made a mistake, gave him a discount. When he opened up a satellite office in San Francisco, guess who ran it? Jose.
Did. Yeah.
Because you're not rewarded for being courageous. This is how it works. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. The board high-fived him because that's the way of the world. But here's the deal. If you want to go to heaven, you don't act like Jose and you don't act like him and you take less. But we don't do that anymore because we're not guided by God anymore. We're guided by, I want to put the picture on Facebook of the stupid car that I just bought because I want to pretend like I'm rich. I'm going to take a picture of my house and post it on Facebook. The house that I don't own, the bank owns, that the mortgage is strangling me. and I go along with Jose. And then when we all go out for drinks, everyone says, "You're smart. That was a good choice. Good for you." Guess what? That doesn't buy your ticket into heaven. And that's the
Joe,
choice you make every day. But this is where we're at, Joe.
Joe, we're fighting this culture. Well, listen, we've said it before here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. And I know the importance of emphasizing, Joe Rossinello, as you always do, that these things don't get you to heaven. These people are far beyond that, Joe. They've already rejected God. The only thing that's going to convert them, okay, is the power of the Holy Spirit, which at the end of the day, I mean, it is always the Holy Spirit that converts. But you understand my point. These people are so blind. But here's the thing. They want to convert. They want to go to heaven. They want to go to hell. Whatever they want to do, okay? My point about guys like this and others like him in America in particular, okay, we are just not fighting against them. Somebody put in the chat room, Padre Pio says, pray, hope, and don't worry. Sorry, I could disagree with the saint. I'm disagreeing with Padre Pio. I'm going to pray and hope, but I worry. I worry about your kids, my kid. I worry about the children in America. I worry about the future of the world. How about this, Joe? I worry about souls, okay? Now, I don't mean to, I would never say anything negative about Padre Pio, okay? But my point is this. No, it's not just about praying. It's also about doing, okay? No, and you mentioned before about why is it that conservatives in America, let's assume, Joe Rossinello, that conservatives make up 50% of the United States population. I think it's more, okay? I think it's absolutely more, but let's assume conservatives make up 50%. Why isn't every parent out there who calls themselves conservative, saying to their children, we are never, ever, never, 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 ever, ever going to put one thin dime in Disney's pocket. Until they change, we're not going to do that. Okay. Why aren't they doing that? And there's so many other examples. And now, Joe, remember something. Now, these are people who listen to Sean Hannity and other evangelistas, my mother likes to call them, evangelical Christians, okay, who think that, once saved, always saved. Doesn't really matter what you do. You're going to heaven if you've responded to an altar call and you believe in your heart and profess with your lips that Jesus is Lord. Actually, we do that in the Catholic Church, too. I'd like to break it to them. But then we do something, damn it. Then we do something, okay? No, I'm not floating into heaven, as Joe Rossinello says.
They don't do it because there's a cost, Joe. You see, this is even during good times, there's a cost to discipleship. And that's why it's not done. And that is, you see, that's it. There's a cost. And you know something, the cost is going to actually, get even more severe. I think we're seeing that now. The choices are going to be even more stark soon. Actually, we're seeing it now. In many places, you can't even, to be honest with you, it's almost like a dirty word to say that you're a Catholic. It's almost like a dirty word.
Sure.
Never mind to live like one. I mean, to be honest with you, even amongst Catholics, Joe, I mean, the culture is it's bought the lie. And frankly, the lie is strangling them. I say this all the time, just look out your window. Is it working, guys? How is it working for you? It's not.
Well,
And
they try to delude themselves into thinking that it's working all they want. I don't know what it is, what it's going to take. When I said earlier, Joe, by the way, and I know you know that I didn't mean it that when I said bring on pain and suffering, I'm not trying to be insensitive I don't want the pain and suffering. I don't want it. But I was speaking a little bit more hyperbolic when I say bring it on, because what's going to wake people up? I'm not God's most enlightened person, nor are you. But we're woke in the real sense. We're aware of what's going on out there in the true and authentic sense of what it means to be awakened to what's going on out there. The rest of America just seems to let these guys like Chapek. And I mean, Joe, listen to this groveling crap. If you had to give me a choice whether I wanted to do business with a company who had a CEO who says this is, by the way, after he refused to condemn this legislation. Okay. He said, quote, "You needed me to be a stronger ally in the fight for equal rights, and I let you down. I'm sorry. I truly believe we're infinitely better and stronger company because of our LGBTQ plus community. I missed the mark in this case, but I'm an ally you can count on, and I will be an outspoken champion for the protections, visibility, and opportunities you deserve. Is this guy a joke? How does a moron like this become a CEO of a major American corporation? Is that a joke? I don't want my kid learning sex education in the public school at all. But let's say this legislation protects me at least up to the third grade. And this guy's talking about equal rights. Whose equal rights are being violated? That's what bothers me about these people.
Well, that
Then you
that gets back to our rights don't count, but that they haven't counted for decades because we've allowed it to happen. We've allowed it to happen. Joe, I mean, I recently posted something that no one probably pays any attention to anyway, which to be honest with you, I'm getting really disenchanted with social media, to be truthful with you. To be honest with you. But that's another story. Uh using Padre Pio as an example, saying the reason why society is falling apart because we don't pray. And people could easily gloss over that. When you pray and you live a sacramental life, prayer changes you. You see, prayer isn't, you see, it just like what they'll make a joke. Oh, with thoughts and prayers. No, that's not what prayer is. Sitting in front of the Blessed Sacrament, doing a holy hour, praying the rosary, meditating on the mysteries of say, the sorrowful mysteries or the glorious mysteries, it changes you. And when you change, you start a cycle of change. That's how things get done. First, though, you have to change, and we're not willing to do it. We're not willing to do it. We don't even go, at the minimum, we don't even go to church.
right.
And that's why nothing is going to change
Right.
unless we begin to commune with God and he changes you and me.
I want you to end the show, Joe. I'm going to hand something over to you. This is the difference that we try to talk about here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. You have Benny Johnson. All right. He's a blogger and social media personality. On the one hand, you have Miranda Devine on the other. I like them both. I got no problem with it. I like Miranda Devine. I've read her articles in the past in the New York Post. But here's the difference. I'm going to throw it over to you when I'm done. I want to give you two quotes. One is that, she was talking about how DeSantis, in her article, she was talking about how DeSantis was firing back. And he got a huge round of applause from the people at this festival that he was at when he was challenging this reporter, basically saying, the reporter says, something about, that discriminates. And DeSantis said, does it say that in the bill? He barked at the reporter, don't say gay. Does it say that? The bill bans classroom instruction on sexual identity and gender orientation. So for who? Shot back DeSantis. For grades pre-K through 3. So 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. And the idea that you wouldn't be honest about that and tell people what it actually says is why people don't trust people like you. Now, he was pointing a finger at the media. But here's Miranda Devine, and then I'm going to bring it to Benny Johnson, and then I'm going to bring it to you, okay? Miranda Devine says, everyone is sick of the lies. They will be taking their revenge in the midterm elections. Now, keep that in the front of your head, Joe Resinello, in the midterm elections. Here's how Benny Johnson puts it on Twitter, okay? DeSantis tells Disney to go F themselves, along with the pedophile groomer cult screaming demonically about this common sense bill to protect children and parents' rights. Anyone trying to sexualize kindergartners, here's my point, Joe, is satanic. Full stop, close quote. Do you see the difference that I'm trying to emphasize in attitude? Miranda Devine, who I like, is looking for a political solution to something by which whereby a group of pre-third grade children are being indoctrinated, and Benny Johnson, who calls it the way it is. It's demonic, and we need to stand up against it and tell these characters the answer's no. We're not allowing you to do that. You could try to bully us all you want. The answer's no. But you see the difference in the response? That's what I want to hand over to you, Joe.
Well, again, what can we do? Obviously, we have to pray because that changes us. But what can you do in a material way? Stop giving them money. That's what you can do. Disney, NFL, Starbucks, stop going to certain movies. We can't even do that, Joe. You see, this is like, and here's another thing. Demonic means nothing to people. They don't believe in sin. They don't believe in sin. There is no sin, Joe. That statement is mocked in the mainstream. They're like demonic, whatever, freak, whatever. There's no devil. There's no sin. I got news for you. If there's no sin, there's no forgiveness. If there's no forgiveness, there's no salvation. There's no redemption. There's no redemption. There's no salvation. Sin is real.
Mhm.
So is the devil. And so is heaven. And you choose every day. We
Right.
can't even do that. Forget about the vote. To be honest with you, I'll vote. I don't expect much out of it. To be honest with you, it's like a virus. I've been saying this for some time. It's like watching, when I look at our country right now, it's like watching a drug addict. You tell the person, listen, you are going to die, dude. You are going to die. You are taking methamphetamines like they're friggin' Fred Flintstone vitamins. You are going to die. Oh, yes, yes, I know. Goes right out and cops more. They got to come to that point. It's got to get to that point. Sadly, the politicians, Joe, all they do, and this is the Republicans too, they stick their finger in the air and they basically text the temperature of the culture. That's what DeSantis did with up to the 4th grade. Who cares, Ron? I want it up to the 12th grade. The 4th grade, that's what's palatable for now. Soon it won't be. Just
Right.
like condoms are palatable, just like sex outside of wedlock is palatable, just like divorce is palatable, all of which is a sin. Just so you know, I'm not making it up either.
Right.
So ultimately, the culture has to change. We talked about this just recently with Mike Aquilina. That's why you have to become holy. Because when you're holy, people listen to you. They will listen. You stop traffic. Until we take our holiness seriously, and that's hard, Joe. I got news for you. That's real hard.
Joe
And
Resinello,
until we do that, nothing changes.
we're going to have to leave it there, Joe Resinello. We want to thank you all for joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, go on the website, go kick the tires a little bit, check it out. Not just Frontline with Joe and Joe. Mike is gracious enough to let us, stay on there. We're there once a week because Joe and I are working men, but Mike's got a great lineup there, including himself, the King Dude himself. He's got a great show, Rick Barrett and the rest. So we encourage you, go kick the tires. Okay. Also, support us at the Frontline TV. The Frontline TV. If you're listening to us at all or hearing us at times on YouTube, then like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And the frontlinetv.com, the frontlinetv.com. If you want to support us at all, Joe, as we said earlier, throw in a few bucks. You could throw in a few bucks. Hey, listen, just like the CEO of Disney, he threw a few bucks to the LGBT crowd to shut them up and placate them because he gave the gangsters their extortion money. So if you want to throw a couple bucks to Joe and I, we know we're not getting any out of the CEO of Disney, but maybe we can get a little bit from you guys, then please do so. So we want to thank you all for supporting us in every way that you do, particularly with your prayers. So thanks again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.